Hello and welcome back to the channel. So today we're starting a series about the 10 habits of long-term successful carnivores. So without further ado, let's get into this topic. And up top, the first habit of long-term carnivores is around salt. So let's dive into salt. First of all, my recommendation around salt would be that you start off by reading this book, The Salt Fix by Dr. James DiNiccolo Antonio. Too little salt can lead to things like sugar and carb cravings, starvation mode, hormonal imbalances, weight gain, insulin resistance, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and yes, even high blood pressure and heart rate. Now, you've always heard that you need to avoid salt if you want to avoid high blood pressure. Unfortunately, a lot of that work was based on a hypothesis that started out without any foundation in science and basically continued to be repeated to the point where, well, it's now just a mantra that they have. Now, there's some conflicting evidence around salt, but one thing is for certain, and that is this. Let's just cover a little excerpt from this book so that you understand that maybe there's more going on here than we think. We believed so strongly in sodium restrictions because we believed so strongly in blood pressure as a metric of health. Low salt advocates posit that even a 1-point reduction in blood pressure, if translated to millions of people, there's a big if there, would actually equal a reduction in strokes and heart attacks. But evidence in the medical literature suggests that approximately 80% of people with normal blood pressure, less than 120/80, are not sensitive to blood pressure raising effects of salt at all. Now, if salt raised blood pressure, then these healthy people with normal blood pressure, given enough salt, should develop high blood pressure. That is, if salt is the cause, if there's causation instead of correlation, then salt should be the trigger. But it doesn't seem to be. Among those with pre-hypertension, a precursor to high blood pressure, roughly 75% are not sensitive to salt. And those are people with pre-hypertension. And even among those with full-blown hypertension, about 55% are totally immune to salt's effects on blood pressure. So that's interesting. If this was about cholesterol, we would be calling it the cholesterol paradox. In this case, we'll just call it the salt paradox. And usually that's a term used by mainstream media and medicine to describe something that doesn't fit their narrative. And in this case, they don't understand why this is happening, simply because they are going into this with an assumption and poor data to support their hypothesis. When you have a paradox where 80% of people with normal blood pressure don't fit the narrative, then you must begin to question your hypothesis in the first place. Okay, but moving on to the next thing. Salt is essential for life. First of all, salt is critical for cellular energy production. The production of ATP, mitochondrial magnesium, regulates cellular energy metabolism. And also it regulates vulnerability to stress. So magnesium is pretty important, and it is a part of salt if you're choosing the right one. Additionally, salt is essential for life, and it is essential for optimized muscle performance. So you can see dietary magnesium depletion can affect metabolic responses during exercise, and it can enhance exercise performance. Additionally, we got to keep in mind that potassium and calcium, two other things found in salt, the right salt, are responsible for muscle contraction and relaxation. So literally everything your body does is powered by magnesium through the form of ATP production, which is the energy our body produces at the cellular level. And literally the contraction and relaxation of every muscle is governed by potassium and calcium. Finally, improved lifespan. Dietary magnesium supplementation has been shown to improve lifespan. Now this is in a mouse model, but it begs the question when you start to look into this about what is really going on with salt, because salt if you believe the mainstream, is deadly. So when I talk about the right kind of salt, I'm talking about real salt. Real salt is unrefined salt. It's unrefined salt from the sea. It is composed of sodium, magnesium, calcium, and potassium. Now, refined salt is sodium chloride. It's deficient in all three of those things that we previously mentioned: magnesium, potassium, and calcium, all of which are very important for the function of your body at a cellular level, at a muscular level. All of these things are hugely important. If we look at the mineral makeup of seawater, we see here are the top 5 elements in seawater. Actually, sulfur is in here too, so these would be a part of the top 6. I think sulfur is somewhere in there between sodium and magnesium. But if we focus on these, we see chloride makes up 58% by the mineral percent. Most of seawater is water. So if we take away the water and we just leave the minerals, then 58% of that minerals left is chloride. 32% is sodium. About 4% is magnesium. So magnesium is hugely important. And a little over 1% is calcium, and a little over 1% potassium. Now, your diet and your lifestyle could be responsible for the depletion of these minerals in your body. Things like coffee, medicines, the environment we have that we live in, and even our diet can all deplete electrolytes. Common medications such as diuretics, anti-diabetics, antipsychotics, anti-seizure medicines, and even antidepressants can result in salt loss. And if you're not being told this by your doctor, if it's not being emphasized, then, well, you maybe could be having an impact from these imbalance in electrolytes, this depletion of minerals in your body. Additionally, carbohydrates require potassium in order to be metabolized, so they will deplete potassium. Now, ketogenic diets like keto and carnivore also do require more salt, and here's why. Because low insulin producing diets can lead to a loss of salts. When you have low insulin, your kidneys will release more salt, and you get rid of it. It also has a diuretic effect on the body. And it's especially pronounced, usually within the first 2 weeks, usually in that adaptation phase. And so during that time, especially, you will probably need to consume more salt. Insufficient salt can lead to things like headaches, nausea, muscle cramps, even a racing heart, or even decreased athletic performance. And these things can vary in how long they affect you until you arrive at a new homeostasis on your keto or carnivore diet. Now, you might be asking yourself, why would I even want to do a keto or carnivore diet if these are the potential side effects? Well, again, these are very temporary side effects. Many of them only last for a couple of days. Some can last for longer. Decreased athletic performance could go on for the longest. That's out of the things I've seen, and that can last maybe 1 or 2 months. And it kind of depends on the individual and how quickly they get fat adapted and whether or not they're using enough electrolytes and they arrive at that new balance. Now, why are we doing this? Well, this is why we choose keto or carnivore, and that's because we want to avoid this cycle right here, the sugar cycle. You consume sugar, and then of course it raises your blood sugar, and then high blood sugar causes your insulin to spike, and then this overreaction of insulin and this chronic stimulation of lots of insulin can lead to insulin resistance. Of course, that overreaction to insulin by your body causes your body to accidentally drop your blood sugar too low when you're consuming refined carbs and refined sugar, refined grains. All of those will spike your blood sugar rapidly, causing your body to overreact and release a massive amount of insulin. So you get a huge insulin spike, and of course that causes your blood sugar to then crash. And when you get the blood sugar crash here at the bottom, then of course your body is going to react again, and it's going to release ghrelin to stimulate hunger, to tell you you need to eat something because your blood sugar is too low. This is a hormone. It's not something that you can just white knuckle manpower through. It's a hormone, and these chemicals are designed to make us perform certain actions. And we have developed these responses to hormones over millions of years. They are powerful drivers in our body. We cannot simply ignore them. You can't willpower your way through hormones. So then we get a massive amount of hunger. We get that post-afternoon hangry sometimes. And then, of course, because we have chronically high insulin, because we're fat locked, we can't burn or metabolize fat because we have insulin constantly telling our body to store, store, store. That is what the insulin is. It's the master hormone. It's the energy storage hormone. And if you don't allow it to fall, you can't burn fat. It doesn't matter how much you do in a short term. Go out and run a mile or do something like that. For a very brief period of time, you will drop your insulin levels, you'll drop your blood sugar, you might enter a state where you fat burn for a brief period of time. But if it's for 1 hour and you're in fat storage mode 23 hours out of a day, then you're not burning fat. You're not burning body fat. So if you only burn body fat for 1 hour a day and you store body fat from literally everything you're consuming for 23 hours a day, well, then you can see how easily it is going to be for you to gain weight over that time and how difficult it will be for you to lose weight. And eventually, because you cannot access your onboard energy, all the fat stored on your body, you will begin to crave sugar and carbohydrates. And then the cycle repeats. Now, what's the long-term impact of this cycle? Well, the side effects of chronic sugar abuse are, of course, inflammation from all the reactive oxygen species that are produced by burning carbohydrates. You will have higher A1C. You are at risk for diabetes. You are at risk for cardiovascular disease and coronary artery disease due to all of the excess inflammation. Those arteries become inflamed. You will get excess production of triglycerides. You'll even get oxidized LDL. And LDL is not bad per se, but oxidized and glycated LDL, because you have excessive amounts of inflammation, excessive amounts of reactive oxygen species, and excessively high amounts of A1C, or blood sugar in other words. Because of all that, your LDL will become glycated, oxidized, and it will turn into the very small, dense LDL particles that can then get stuck under the inflamed lining of your arteries. And then, of course, they get attacked by the white blood cells, which turn into macrophages, which then harden and turn into arterial plaque. That is the mechanism for cardiovascular disease and coronary artery disease. And everyone wants to blame fat or the fat in our diet, but it has nothing to do with the fat in our diet, because your body's going to make LDL whether you consume fat or not. It's just going to make a different amount. It's not, there's nothing wrong with LDL. In fact, there's, healthy LDL. You can ask your doctor about this. There are versions of LDL that are very healthy, and that's what we want to have. And then there are versions that are very unhealthy. We get the unhealthy versions when we get locked into this sugar cycle. So what are the salt habits of the long-term carnivores? Well, in a nutshell, first of all, use an unrefined sea salt, because again, it's not just going to have and be high in the refined sodium chloride like what you get refined salt. But you don't just need sodium. You need the sodium, you need the potassium, the calcium, and the magnesium. You need all four of those elements for your body to function correctly. So you need to use an unrefined sea salt. This can be something like, a Himalayan salt, some other salt that has been buried from some sort of Dead Sea, and can then be mined and is free of a lot of the contaminants that are in what I would say is modern sea salt. Real salt is something that I use, as well as pink Himalayan sea salt. Next up, you're going to salt to taste, right? I know it's kind of crazy, but you need to trust your taste on this and salt to taste. Now, your taste may be a little skewed, especially if you've been abusing it over time with refined sodium chloride. Next up, you need to trust your salt thermostat. So what do I mean by trust your salt thermostat? Well, look, the regulation of salt intake and increased salt cravings when you aren't getting enough is a part of our biological system. That biological system is known as our salt thermostat. This system has formed over hundreds of millions of years, and within human beings, it's been governing what we've been doing for the last 2 million years. And it exists in order to keep us from dying from too little salt. This is the critical part where you salt to taste, then you trust your salt thermostat, putting your ego away, because I know we're all big brain people. We think we can manage this and micromanage this. But again, we've already talked about how hormones are what are actually managing the things in your body. You're not managing them. You're telling your body, I am going to tell you what to do. Your body will override you every single time. You can only willpower it for so long. Remember, willpower is just another chemical in your brain, and eventually it's going to run out and the hormones are going to win. So work with your hormones, not against them. So then listen to your body and the feedback that it's providing. If your body is telling you, seems like we got too much salt, and because you don't have sort of that correct salt to taste yet, your taste isn't maybe fine-tuned, then a little less next time. If your body's telling you through maybe some of these symptoms that we mentioned before that you're not getting enough salt, or you're not getting enough of the right kind of salt, then maybe you need to look at what kind of salt you're using. And again, use an unrefined sea salt and use a little more of it. Finally, you're going to respond to what your body is saying. And I say this because listening to your body is one thing, but we are often taught to ignore what our body tells us. This is one thing that we get from modern medicine. And the emphasis with modern medicine is just, oh, I'm sorry, but that's just the way things are, and you're just going to have to ignore that. But here's a pill, and it will mask your symptoms. It won't solve the problem, and it won't get to the root cause of the problem, because the root cause of the problem is just old age. But it's not. Things like inflammation and joints, achy joints and pain that you think are a result of just getting older are really a result of probably too much inflammatory seed oils in your diet and too much inflammatory sugar and carbohydrates in your diet. And when you cut those things out, then you will see that your body loses all the inflammation, and suddenly all those aches and pains that were just a part of getting older disappear. I know I had my lots of aches and pains in my joints that disappeared, some really quickly, and others that I had for years took longer to resolve. But eventually, over a period of 7 months, no more pain in this wrist, which I've had pain in for years now, maybe even a decade. So the importance of responding, not ignoring, cannot be emphasized enough. Listen and respond. And those are the salt habits of long-term carnivores. Now, if you're looking to boost energy or maybe control inflammation, just feel better, get back to that healthy feeling that you had when you were in your 20s, but have it again in your 40s, it is possible. Trust me, that is my own experience. So if that's something you're interested in, but you just need help in getting there, then you can always consult me or reach out to me through linktree/Carnimentor, and we can schedule a free discovery call where we can talk about my program and whether or not it's right for you. If you want to continue to support the channel, then please click the like, share, and subscribe buttons. Leave a comment below. What do you think of the salt habits of long-term carnivores? Are these the things that you do? Is there anything else that you do around salt that you think has helped you? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. That's all I have for now, and I will see you in the next video. Have a great day.